me ask you a pertinent question about the commodity of time. When was the last time you put yourself at the top of the priority list and focused on your own personal, physical, and spiritual development? Because the mental side of growth only happens when you make a premium investment in your own story. Because after all, you see, life isn't a full-time contract. It does eventually have an expiration date. It's a fierce reminder to all of us for the need to maximize the moment of opportunity and maximize our level of difference. Owen Santos knows all about this. As a child, he was born with severe asthma and couldn't breathe. Let's pause and think about that for a moment. The power of opportunity and influence is fleeting, and Santos knows that focusing on yourself and your personal development is not a selfish endeavor. It's rather an admission and an understanding that we can only be at our best selves if we optimize our level of acceptance into our own individual investment of success. And for Santos, he contributes to the conversation of progress by recruiting, leading, and coaching some of the most high-level sales professionals, leaders, and teams from all over the country. He started in the solar sales space of sales, but whether he's coaching high-level sales teams or individuals to reach their fullest level of their potential, the principles of success remain the same: finding out what the noble cause of the individual is and cultivating that into their passion or purpose, providing them a permission slip to travel down the path of what they really want and giving them the tools in order to cultivate the maximum level of success. For Santos, adversity has been a defining moment of difference in his life and overcoming the status quo of what he deemed to be successful and defining a pathway of difference which allows him to maximize the amount of impact that he's able to levy on other people. If you're ready to have an elite conversation about leveraging yourself and your mental, physical, and emotional health as a priority in your own life and the way you live, then some of the nuggets that Santos shared during this conversation you cannot afford to miss. So without further delay, I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. My conversation with Owen began with the inception of his existence and how not being able to breathe at the beginning of his life because of his severe asthma impacted the person he was then and the person that he is right now.
It's a good question. I can tell you've read my bio, so I appreciate you doing the research. I would say, I mean, it did a lot of things for me, right? But the number one thing that it gave me was just the perspective. I couldn't breathe for a long time growing up, and then multiple different times, even on into high school. When I got real sick. So, just the perspective of that reason as a motivator and as a driver and as an inspiration for me to do the right thing and perform the exercises and have the diet and the nutrition and the lifestyle that would keep me healthy really transformed everything that would happen next in my life, because I always had that perspective of, I remember and I know what it feels like to not be able to breathe. So having that as a massive driving reason to do the right things showed me how powerful any reason could be, right? Because that was just mine.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Owen, we share sort of the same synergy in the fact, buddy, that, I was born with cerebral palsy, and I actually found out at the age of 9, my friend, that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life because of my disability without assistance, my friend. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on your definition of overcoming adversity and really thriving to accomplish the things that you want in life. How important is that to you?
Is the question how important it is to be able to overcome adversity, Kevin?
Yeah, in your perspective, yeah. How important is it for you to develop strategies to overcome adversity?
I can't think of many things more important, right? Even when my life has been going perfectly, and the people that I know, when I've seen their life go perfectly, there's always something that comes up. Like there's no such thing as a perfect life, and there's no such thing as a life without adversity. And I believe that if you don't choose some of your adversity, if you don't go seek challenges, oftentimes life will just kick you in the ass and give you challenges that you don't want anyway. So developing that almost as a muscle, that ability to overcome adversity and know that there's always going to be some challenge that comes your way, and having that mindset of just understanding that challenges aren't a bad thing. It's a good thing. It's what makes us sharp, and it's what builds the muscles that we need, whether it be mental, physical, spiritual, or emotional, to succeed in life. So welcoming them and having a different relationship with adversity than most people has definitely served me well.
Yeah, and Owen, I am a strong proponent of believing that the answer to the test of adversity is our ability to be resilient. So I'm also curious, taking your definition of what it means to have a resilient spirit and lead life with resilience.
What it means to have a resilient spirit. I think it's that. I think it's that understanding that challenges are going to come your way, that it's part of life, and that ability to look at them as a blessing as opposed to a curse. That ability to understand that so many things can happen for you as opposed to you. And that has been one of the biggest separators I've seen in the real successful and the real happy people that I've coached and worked with versus the unsuccessful and unhappy people. Is the happy ones and the successful ones, they understand that just about anything can happen for them or it can happen to them. And it's really up to them, whether they decide or how they decide to interpret that event actually happening. Whereas, the unhappy, the unsuccessful people are always feeling like life is happening to them and they have no control over things and they don't understand how best to respond to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Owen, I'm also curious to get your thoughts between the difference of implementation versus learning, because I know that you draw a distinction between those two concepts. So I'm wondering if you can share it with me today.
Definitely. I think this is one of the common misses out there right now in society. We're blessed with more information than we've ever had access to, right? We're in the golden age of information, so to speak. You can load up a podcast or you can load up an audio book from anybody, like really the best in the world on almost any topic, right? So this idea of learning is very popular, and I'm not like a hater of learning by any means, but learning without implementation, I believe, is somewhat like quicksand. It's not much better than just kind of mindlessly entertaining yourself, because people retain so little of what they read, so little of what they listen, and then they do almost nothing, from in my experience, with the information that they gather. So that old adage that knowledge is power, I don't believe knowledge is power. I think knowledge can be paralyzing if you get too much of it without enough action. So typically when somebody's after learning, the intention of learning is to grow, and just learning doesn't cause growth, but learning and action, which is essentially implementation, is typically what causes growth in my experience. So I'm a big proponent, a big fan, and a big advocate for prioritizing implementation over just learning, which is essentially just, gathering all this possible information. I would much rather read one great book and implement 100% of it over the course of a year than go read 60 books and not be able to tell you 3 great things from each book.
Yeah, absolutely. And Owen, one of the fascinating reasons I wanted to talk to you was to get your perspective on, what I call the heartbeat of hope. One of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast is I looked at the world and I said to myself that we have to be able to, first of all, communicate and talk to each other without really disrespecting viewpoints. We don't always have to agree, but I think in some sense we've lost our ability to communicate and really build bridges of consensus and understanding. So, in your view, I'm just curious to get your thoughts on how do you think we can return to a better sense of civility, if that makes sense?
A better sense of stability?
Civility and understanding and unity. How do you think we can build more bridges of unity?
It's a deep question, Kevin. I've never been asked that one. How do we build? I would say that a big thing that has been missed and a big thing that is lost in going to get something like that you're after is just the understanding of what people want and caring about, what the individual wants that you're speaking to, as opposed to just what you want from the conversation, right? So me actually caring what you want from this podcast, what you want it to be like, as opposed to me just trying to get my message out, right? So that ability and that desire to really be more interested as opposed to being focused on being interesting, I think just that can lead to a higher level understanding of each other. And in my opinion, if we focus on helping each other, I think Zig Ziglar said this way back in the day, but if we focus on just helping others get what they want, it'll lead to everything that we want. So as far as stability, understanding, and creating more hope, people don't seem to know what they want very well these days, and they definitely don't seem to be surrounded by people that are going to help them get it. So clarifying all that and then creating a clear path from where people are at now to where they're going and how to get there would further that pursuit and help you in your cause.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Owen, I'm also curious to follow up by asking you, how do you think people can develop a clarity of message, whether it be in communication or something that they want to achieve in life? So how do you think people can do a better job of developing a clarity of message?
Just a clear message. Are you asking how can somebody develop a clear message, essentially meaning like what they have to say? How can they clarify what they have to say?
Yeah, in respect to their life in terms of communicating what they want, both personally or professionally.
Probably going through and understanding why it is that they want what they want. And the people that I coach, Kevin, I've noticed oftentimes that they have a very vague idea of what it is that they want, right? And if you have a vague idea, you're going to get vague results. And I've sat down and sat in front of many people that, say, I don't know what I want, or I don't know what I'm after, or even some people with less hope and less going for them say, I don't want anything. right? But everybody, in my experience, has wanted something, and asking each individual a series of questions, finding out what matters to them, why that matters to them, and then helping them create a vision of what they're actually after, then painting a very clear picture from, or a very clear path, I should say, from where they're at now to where they actually want to end up. And along that way, to get back to your question, I've seen people's messages get very, very clear. Once they understand what they're after, once they understand how to go get it, and the actions that it will take to get them from, where they're at now to where they want to go, they're able to articulate their message along that road much more clearly than they were before they even knew where they were going, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Owen, I'm a big proponent of promoting inclusion and access to opportunity for all people. Outside of hosting this podcast, I work with businesses to help them amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities, because I think it's an undertapped segment of our population. So, under the context of inclusion and breaking down barriers to access to opportunities in life, I'm curious, how do you define the concept of inclusion for all people, and what does that mean to you?
I believe everybody has a right to the opportunity that best suits them, right? So if we're talking about inclusion, it's an interesting topic and not one that I've dove into in a podcast before, Kevin. So I appreciate the question. But everybody has their own zone of genius, right? Despite handicaps, despite limitations, I do believe that everybody can be or is great at something. So when you can take the time to find out what that is with each individual and then present them or create an opportunity for them in that lane of genius or in that lane of excellence, whatever you want to call it, I believe that off the top of my head that would be one of the most beautiful forms of inclusion that I could think of, because it's when you try to fit any random person or any unique person into a specific box, that oftentimes that person doesn't get included because they don't fit inside that box.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've reached the favorite part of our conversation, on the question I wanted to ask you the most. So let's dive into talking about structuring relationships, because I believe that building relationships is the lifeblood of making progress in life. There's a sign in my office, Owen, that says life is a constant game of networking. So tell me about the power of maximizing relationships and the importance of sort of putting yourself outside of your comfort zone in order to build and cultivate sustainable relationships.
I love this question, because this is something that I was really bad at and that I still don't believe I'm an expert at by any means. I used to think for a very long time, being a high performer in a lot of the different things that I did, that I could just perform my way to the life that I wanted, and the people around me didn't matter as much as my performance. And I was very much wrong in that. So I had to step outside my comfort zone in a massive way. When I started my career in the sales industry, I was knocking on doors, right? And for a regular middle-class guy that was raised not to bug people, the concept of knocking on doors was very scary. It was very, very scary. So I had to step outside my comfort zone and develop the ability to connect with random strangers and develop a relationship and lead them to a product that I believe would help them. So that showed me how powerful different connections could be, because I was able to go from not knowing any new people in the morning to knowing 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 new people by the end of the day. And those, say, 6 people would buy something from me that would be worth thousands of dollars, not just to me, but also to them, right? So immediately I started to see a return on stepping outside of my comfort zone in the form of tangible dollars. So that showed me how powerful it was to step outside your comfort zone. And then as my career elevated and I got better and better at this, again, I tried to outperform my way into the career, into the life that I wanted. But it wasn't until I finally realized that I could take that same skill, which was just the ability to step outside myself and do something that felt strange and foreign to me. I could take that ability and continue to use it in different ways to develop different relationships inside and outside of work, that those relationships started to serve me in a way that just my singular performance never could. So they were a multiplier of sorts on all of my efforts where I thought I could, again, just perform my way to the top. It was inevitably the relationships that I've made along the way and that I'm still making that have served me financially, spiritually, emotionally, mentally, more so than anything that I could have just done by myself.
Yeah, and I'm curious to ask you about your company Olympus and what the mission behind the company is, my friend. So I'll give you the platform in order to do it. So tell me about the mission, the company, and what it's all about, my friend.
I appreciate the question, man. It's Olympus is essentially just a team of people, and it's a $0 coaching project. So I've been blessed enough to do well financially in the previously mentioned career. So it's really just starting to get going now. But about 2 months ago, I started a $0 coaching project. And what that means is I'm just creating a team. I should say we, because my brother is involved in it as well. So we are creating a team of individuals that want nutrition coaching, that want fitness coaching, that want to essentially build their mental and their physical strength. And they just maybe don't have the financial means to invest in it with their dollars, but they have the means to invest in it with their time, which I value more than dollars. So it genuinely doesn't actually cost anybody anything. They come in, they get a custom fit program, nutrition and fitness to accomplish their fitness goals and desires. And then also we focus the mental coaching side based off what they actually want out of life. So it's a full custom fit program designed to get people what they actually want and to give them the team that surrounds them doing the same thing to support them along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other questions I wanted to ask you was about the concept of leadership and helping people to become the best versions of themselves, my friend. So tell me, from your perspective, how do you define leadership and really cultivate the wisdom of people to get them to be the best versions of themselves?
Mm-hmm. Kevin, I believe a leader understands the concept that what we do today, we get paid for tomorrow, right? A leader understands the concept of delayed gratification, and a leader is willing to operate based off not how just they feel, but also who they are. So one of the most fulfilling things I've ever been able to do in my career is lead others, is build teams and lead individuals and help people actually get what they're after and be able to stand up on a stage and look left and look right and know that there's hundreds of people on that stage that I was able to help, get essentially what they wanted. So a leader to me is somebody that's able to delay their own gratification so they can accomplish the gratification of others, and that understands how truly fulfilling, leadership and pouring into others can be, because selfishly helping others get what they're after is it's the most fulfilling thing that I've ever personally experienced in my career. And once you taste that as a leader, as long as you can remember what that feels like and delay gratification long enough and learn and acquire these skills and then implement them yourself and distill that information and give it to other people and guide them along the process, that can be the most fulfilling thing that at least I personally have ever been a part of.
Yeah, and just building on that, let's talk about discovering your noble cause in life and really finding your inner center. Because, I truly believe that whatever thing is sort of caving in on you from a personal or professional standpoint, it's important that people find their inner cause or inner passion of why they started what they wanted to do how do you define finding your noble cause, and what does it mean to you to sort of discover what your inner passion is about as well?
I love the question, Kevin. If you don't mind me asking, have you defined yours? Do you have a noble cause? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, so my noble cause, Owen, is having conversations with people. I'll tell you, as part of my disability, my friend, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast is sometimes it's not as easy for me to get out and socialize with people. So I
Yeah,
created this podcast as a way to build my own social capital and sort of social intellectual knowledge. So my sort of noble cause is to have conversations that move the needle of progress forward.
I absolutely love that, Kevin. And kudos to you for finding a way around what others, would consider a disability. And as you develop this platform, it's really cool to see it, cultivate more relationships and probably bring you more than most people get out of a regular social interaction and a regular social life. So awesome job, man. It's been cool to see.
Well, thanks for that, my friend. And I'll give you the space to tell me, how do you define a noble cause, and what does it mean to you, my friend?
Sure. So this circles back to the first question about the asthma and the way that I was born with that. My original noble cause was just being able to breathe, and that's a pretty significant driving force. And that's why I was able to get really into fitness and give up sugar and get super serious about the diet and nutrition and all that when I was 10 years old, just because I realized that doing something like that was going to help me breathe. So my initial noble cause was just being able to breathe. Now I've been fortunate enough to be very, very healthy for the last really 2.5 decades. So being able to breathe isn't something that necessarily drives me every single day, although I do remember what it felt like to not be able to breathe. So that can be a driving force for me at times when I don't want to get out of bed and when I don't want to necessarily eat or do the right thing at all times as far as nutrition goes. But my noble cause now is exactly that. To me, it's the thing that makes everything else easy. And I believe that when you have a crystal clear noble cause, it's just the giant hammer that you need to essentially smash on any other reason in your way to not do something. Because when we think about, for me, when I wake up in the morning and I think about going to the gym, I'm always going to have a reason not to do it and a reason to do it, right? Like I might be tired that day. I might have a headache. There's always reasons not to do things. And I think of performing and I think of doing the right thing or high level actions. I think of it as simply as I possibly can, which is if my reason to do it is bigger than the reasons not to do it, I'll end up doing it, right? I try to keep that as simple as possible. So a noble cause, in my opinion, is the biggest reason to do something. And when you have a giant, clearly defined, well visited noble cause, it tends to smash on any other reason that you have not to do something. So whatever that thing is, the reasons you have not to do that thing, if your noble cause is big enough and clear enough for you, it tends to smash on those reasons not to do that thing. So a noble cause to me is that. It's the ultimate inspiration. It's the ultimate motivator, whatever you want to call it. I think of it simply as the ultimate reason to do something that makes my life very simple. So I've been credited with, being disciplined and being structured and things like that throughout my career. I don't believe that I'm that disciplined or that structured. I just have a giant noble cause. So it's easier for me to consistently do the things that I believe that I'm supposed to do than it is for other people to do them at some times, just because I'm always thinking of my giant noble cause and it smashes on any reason not to do the thing.
Yeah, and selfishly, I wanted to ask you this question. I firmly believe in setting your own standard of expectations because, if you don't have a foundation of your own fundamental expectations, it's hard to reach anybody else's for yourself. And I always tell people that my sort of motto in life is that inclusion is the gateway to independence, and I hold myself to the standard of breaking down as many barriers to access to information and opportunities as I can for other people, because I believe if you help other people grow, then we all win. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on setting your own level of expectations and the importance of making the investment in yourself and your thoughts there.
Mm-hmm. I love that question, Kevin. You asked some good questions, man. I've never been asked a lot of these questions, and I've done quite a few of these. So, setting my own expectation, I would say I define that as intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic, right? So, or cheap motivation versus internal motivation, however you want to label it. But there's always going to be other people to compete against, right? But I've found oftentimes in sports and in competitions in professional life, when I've caught those people and when I beat those people, it's very satisfying for a split second, and then it goes away. The only person that you're constantly able to compete against or compete with, I wouldn't define it as against, I would define it as competing with, is yourself, right? And that person that you were yesterday. So setting that own expectations, for example, the expectation I try to set with my clients and the expectation I try to set with myself is just to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. Some people like to say 1% better every single day. I'm not putting even a number on it. I'm just looking to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. And I believe if you're not afraid to fail because you take the expectation and the reward from beating somebody else or quote unquote winning out of it a little bit, and your expectation just becomes to get a little bit better than it was yesterday. And if you can build on that, obviously, even if you do get the 1% better every single day, by the end of the year, you're a completely different person. And that's my goal, and that's my expectation of myself, and that I try to give to other people as well, because that external competition or that cheap motivation, it can only last for so long, and there's nothing wrong with it to get you going, to compete against somebody else. I love to compete as much as the next guy and more than the next guy typically. But the only true expectation that can last forever and that can really get you what you want, in my opinion, is that desire to consistently improve just a little bit every day. And to do that, we have to be willing to consistently fail, gather the information that the failure has given us, implement that, and move on. And if you have that process of trying, failing, gathering information, and implementing the information, my expectation is that it's very hard for you to lose over a long enough timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Owen, one of the commitments that I make to myself every day is to be at least 10 minutes physically active every day, because as part of my disability, my muscles contract faster than yours do. So one of the ways that I hold myself personally accountable and committed to a cause is being at least 10 minutes physically active every day. And, one of the ways I hold myself mentally accountable is to have these conversations to move the needle of progress forward. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on your definition of the concepts of both a commitment and accountability, and what those two words mean to you.
Commitment and accountability. When you say commitment, Kevin, I think of reputation. And I'm not talking about reputation in the typical sense of the word. I'm talking about reputation with myself, right? So commitments we make to other people are, of course, important. And I think that most of us learn that at a very young age. What I wasn't taught, just because I don't believe my parents had ever thought of it or been taught this, but what I was not taught was that commitments to self create reputation. And in times of strife, you're going to rise or fall, typically not to the level of your skills, but to the level of your reputation with yourself, right? So I've realized that at least in my life, for me personally, and a lot of the people that I've worked with and coached, the reputation that you have with yourself becomes that relationship that you have with yourself. And the relationship that you have with yourself is the most important relationship that you're going to have with anybody on this planet. And that's just my opinion, right? But so when you say commitment, I think of reputation, because the commitments made or broken to yourself define and determine the reputation that you have with yourself. And then whether you have a good reputation with yourself or whether you have a bad reputation with yourself, is really going to have a massive impact on not just your success, but also your happiness in general.
Yeah, and just building on that, Owen, I believe that in order to have success personally and professionally, we have to take ownership of our own individual story because, like we said earlier, it's important to have a personal level of accountability. But for you, I'm curious, what would you define as your greatest moment of a defining difference so far in your life?
If I had to pick one moment,
In your life to this point, yeah.
hmm, again, I've never been asked that one, Kevin. That's a good one. If I had to pick one moment, it would probably be when I was about 10 years old, and the doctor said that I was going to be in the hospital consistently for the rest of my life, and that I wasn't going to be able to live a normal life, and that the only way that I would accomplish not doing that is if I never got sick again. And he said it because getting the flu or getting a real bad cold would bring on asthma, and then that would put me back in the hospital. And when he said it, he said in a very sarcastic, talking down type tone, like it was not something that I could pull off. And that sparked something in me that made me think, challenge accepted, kind of F you, like I'm going to figure this out, right? And embracing that challenge and always remembering what that felt like definitely launched me down the path of building my mental and physical strength from then. So especially early years, I would say that was the defining moment.
Yeah, and since you shared yours, I'll quickly share mine. So, as I told you throughout our conversation, I actually found out, like I said, at the age of 9, that I wouldn't be able to walk without a walker for the rest of my life. But the defining moment of my life actually happened when I was 9 years old. It was the beginning of my fourth year of elementary school, and the day before I started grade 4 was the day I found out I wouldn't be able to walk for the rest of my life. So uh, after my last surgery, I had to go back to school the next day, and the doctor who had performed the surgery put myself and my parents in a hospital conference room, Owen, and he looked at my parents and he said, all of the successes and the failures of the surgery, but at the end of it, he said Kevin won't be able to walk for the duration of his life without assistance. And the next day I had to go back to school, and I went down to the principal's office because she knew why I was in London the previous day. And she had everyone assigned to my file in her office, from teachers to social workers to therapists, and my parents were there. And she had a big empty space in the middle of her office for my wheelchair. And I went through the story of what the doctor had told me the previous day, Owen. And Dr. Carol Crowley was the name of my middle school principal, and she looked at me and she said, "The only limitations on your life are the artificial ones that you place on yourself personally." And that's sort of been the changing trajectory point in my life. So I'm curious about asking you, how do we eliminate expectations and really push ourselves to reach our highest level of achievement?
I love that story, Kev. Thanks for telling me, man. You said you were 9 when that happened?
9 years old, buddy, I found out I wouldn't be able to walk without assistance for the rest of my life. And that's one of the reasons fitness is so important to me. So, uh, in addition to hosting this podcast for fun and to keep myself in physical condition, buddy, and it also helps mentally. I lift weights, buddy, at least twice a week, and I go swimming, and it really helps with my mental and physical sort of mindset as well. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on what it means to sort of eliminate uh, barriers or limitations in life as well.
Yeah, I love that. In regards to eliminating limitations, I don't know where this came from, but I've always been just of the belief that what one man can do, another can do. And obviously there are restrictions to that, right? Because of your actual limitations, you probably can't quite do what I can do. And because of different genetic limitations, I can't quite do what LeBron James can do, right? But for the most part, I believe that what one man can do, another can do. And there's always a process to everything. And as opposed to trying to figure out how to do something, a while back, I learned that just understanding the who could potentially be more important than even the how, right? Because if you find the right who, for example, if I'm trying to, I'll just stick with the basketball example, right? If I'm trying to learn to dunk a basketball, as opposed to trying to figure out exactly how and studying that and taking all the time to figure out the best way to do that, I could just find somebody that's really good at it, right? Say I was fortunate enough to be around LeBron James, and he could probably teach and take me there a lot faster than if I tried to figure it out by myself. Right? And this goes back to the networking question that you asked, right? So understanding the who as opposed to just the how was something that really helped me do what I call collapsed timelines, which means it really helped take me from where I am now to where I want to be. And there's that timeline in between. And my goal is when I work with somebody or in the things that I'm trying to learn in my life is to try to collapse that timeline. So if something normally takes a year, I'm looking to get it done in 2 months, right? If it normally takes 5 years, I want to get it done in a year. And I want to know who can show me how to do that. And that has really helped smash limitations and all sorts of barriers for me and the people that I've worked with in my career.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Owen, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with the concept of legacy and how you want your legacy to be defined both personally and professionally, my friend.
How I want my legacy to be defined.
That's correct. Yeah.
And I want him to live the greatest life that he could possibly live. And if I can help guide him to that, that will be, that would honestly be enough legacy for me. But on a broader scale, I was taught this by Ed Milet 5-6 years ago, and I added a layer to it. So Milet talks about, you know, at the end of his life, if he has to face the man that I'm supposed to be. So if I have to face the man that I'm supposed to be at the end of my life, and I get to look that man in the eyes, and this is the guy that loved everybody, that helped everybody, that experienced everything, that had all the joy, all the sadness, all the happiness, all the laughs, all the tears, that lived the very best possible life that Owen Santos can live. And the idea is that I get to meet that person, and that heaven would be looking that person in the face and shaking his hand and being like, you know, I caught you. I caught you. I'm everything that I was supposed to be. And then hell would, of course, be if you have to shake that man's hand and you can't look up from the ground because you just didn't live the life that you could have been living the entire time. So my idea of legacy now is to not just shake the hand of that man and say, you know, I caught you, but also to be able to look to the right and look to the left and see thousands of people doing the same thing, catching the very best version of themselves, and knowing that I helped each one of those people up on that stage or up on that mountain or wherever that may be, catch the person that they were supposed to be and live the life that they were supposed to be. And if that person, if one of those people on the right can be my son, and if one of those people on the left can be my wife, and I can have a bunch of others next to me as well, then that would be the ultimate legacy for me. Yeah, just simply that my son will be my biggest legacy, Kevin. That's all. So I want him up there with me. I want to help him, you know, live the life that he is absolutely maxed capable of living, like this very, very, very best life. That will be my legacy. And if I can help a couple thousand people do that at the same time, maybe a couple 100,000 people do that as well, then that's the legacy that I want to live.
Yeah, fabulous, my friend. And finally, tell me, if people want to get connected with all the great work that you do, my friend, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, it's just Olympus Leaders on Instagram, just Olympus Leaders. And then the website is teamolympus.net. And there's a form on there for our $0 coaching program. If anybody is looking to elevate their life, to build mental and physical strength, and is willing to invest their time and effort, we don't ask for any money. We help people get there for no costs, and we're building a community around it. And it's a beautiful thing.
Fabulous. Well, Owen, I have to tell you, my friend, you're my last podcasting commitment of the week, and I couldn't think of a better way to end my week of conversations, my friend. Your story is certainly inspirational and inspiring, and I want to thank you for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon and helping a community of people really elevate and maximize their level of personal growth and personal development, my friend. Your work in the space and time on my behalf is most appreciated, and I want to thank you for being here today.
Yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Your story is inspiring, and I appreciate you having me on.